I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. Brian Deese, the director of the National Economic Council, joined Karine Jean-Pierre at a press briefing on Tuesday. The White House advisor sought to quell concerns about a possible recession when GDP numbers are released on Thursday. Recessions are traditionally defined by a fall in GDP in 2 successive quarters. But the White House has pointed to conflicting information, like a tight labor market and job growth, as a sign that the standard indicator should not trigger the same alarm bells. In fact, the National Bureau of Economic Research may not declare it a recession due to other signs that contradict what may well be a fall in GDP. Republicans have accused the White House of trying to change the definition of a recession, and Jean-Pierre especially has faced criticism over refusing to give a clear definition. While GDP numbers may show the U.S. economy shrinking across the first half of 2020, it remains to be seen how to square that with the other economic indicators that seemingly point the other way.
Screen. Hi, everybody. I just wanted to start with a couple of updates on some of our core economic priorities here at the White House, and then happy to take your questions. So 3 updates. The first is on what has been a longstanding administration priority around attracting more investment into the United States, building more secure supply chains, and building more industrial strength here in America. I just came from a meeting in the Roosevelt Room with the president and the chairman of SK, South Korean conglomerate, and they made today a very significant announcement, $22 billion in investment in the United States across a broad complex of investments that all share a common feature. They all are at the cutting edge of innovation in manufacturing globally. So we're talking large capacity batteries, electric vehicle charging manufacturing, semiconductor manufacturing, and pharmaceuticals. And the president noted this at top, but it was clear in the context of the meeting that SK's confidence and commitment in making this kind of long-term and very significant investment in the United States is a clear signal that the United States, along with its allies, is winning the technology competition for the 21st century. And of course, this comes in the context of a significant vote that the Senate took just earlier today in bipartisan fashion to move forward the Historic Chips for America Act. Some of you were with us just yesterday, when we were meeting with CEOs and labor leaders to underscore the economic and national security significance of this piece of legislation. And we are hopeful that we can get that piece of legislation to the president's desk here without delay. And I think you connect these things together, what you see is a really historic resurgence in American manufacturing and American innovation. I would note that over the past 18 months, we've seen the economy create 613,000 jobs just in manufacturing alone. That's the strongest growth in manufacturing in 3 decades. And again, I think it demonstrates that in the aggregate, across investing in infrastructure, working with partners and allies, prioritizing research, prioritizing things like semiconductors, we are building an innovation ecosystem here in the United States to attract this investment, particularly in the context of a period prior to this when we were seeing more and more of that investment go to China. Second priority I just wanted to update you on is energy and energy markets. I hope that you are all aware and have seen the progress that we're making on gas prices coming down here in the United States. But as you've heard the president say, and certainly our team's focus is to keep up on the key policy priorities that are helping to stabilize markets, even in the face of global uncertainty and a globally uncertain energy market. And so I would just note today, again, 2 pieces of news. The first is that the Department of Energy published its next notice of sale for release of oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. These releases have really proved critical over the last several months. When I think I was here initially and announced that the president had directed the goal of releasing 1 million barrels a day, a lot of the questions that you and others had was whether this was even feasible, whether it was actually feasible to sustain putting 1 million barrels a day onto the market consistently. We've now demonstrated that that is the case, and a new analysis out from the Treasury Department today underscores the significance that that collective release from the United States and our allies has reduced gas prices by about 40 cents a gallon compared to where we would be had the president not directed that action and worked with our international partners. The second is the administration, the Department of Energy, is proposing a new rule today that would allow DOE to enter into forward contracts to purchase oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve in the future at a fixed set price. This sounds a little wonky, but bear with me. It's actually quite important. What it means is that producers, oil producers, have more certainty about future demand for their product because the Department of Energy, having released significant oil onto the market, is now going to be a significant purchaser of oil into the future. So with this rule in place, they will be able to enter into fixed contracts to buy at a set price. And what that does is it provides oil producers more certainty and more incentive to produce in the near term if they know that they're going to get paid at a fixed price at a future date. I would note that those purchases are not going to happen until well in the future, and because of the shape of the futures curve in oil, we can actually purchase more oil, replenish the SPR, strengthen that national asset without competing for demand for barrels in the near term. So that rule was proposed today, and the Department of Energy will be working to finalize that and then work with the industry to enter into these fixed price contracts for repurchase. The third priority is in context around what we have discussed with you all around our economic goal of transitioning from a historically strong recovery into a period of more stable and steady growth. We are in that period of transition right now. I think it's the analogy is to running legs of a race where we ran the first leg of this race at an extraordinarily fast clip. That has served us well in terms of positioning us in a stronger position than virtually any other country in the world. And now we are seeing growth slowing, which is what we should expect, or we would expect. But as we look across the economy today, what we and other outside analysts identify is that consumer spending remains solid, household balance sheets remain largely in good shape. We are seeing credit delinquencies and measures of credit stress at historic lows, credit card delinquencies at a 15-year low, mortgage delinquencies at a 30-year low. And we are seeing industrial output sustain and in positive territory 5 of the last 6 months. And so the totality of the economic data is consistent with that type of transition and is not consistent with a recession. Just to dig into that a little bit, a couple of points. One is on hiring, and I think we have a chart here. But just to explain what you're looking at here, during the second quarter, the economy created 375,000 jobs a month. So that's the yellow bar on the far side. In the first few months of every recession since the 1980s, the economy lost jobs. And so historically in the United States, when we're in a recession, I think this is sort of typical common sense understanding of recession, but it also happens to be the case, the economy is losing jobs. In the second quarter of this year, there was record-setting job creation. In fact, if you look at the period immediately preceding recessions in the United States, job growth is roughly 1/3 of what it was in the second quarter. So what we're seeing on the labor market side is a continued resilient, strong labor market recovery. On spending and investment, again, what economists think about as core to the economy's strength, what consumers are doing in terms of spending, what households are doing in terms of investment in businesses. Real private final demand, which measures consumption and investment by consumers and businesses. It grew at 3% in the first quarter. It's expected to grow in the second quarter. And then again, that's in contrast to what we see typically during recessions. So I just want to make a final note on the definition of recession, which has been an issue that I know many of you have reported on. As Secretary Yellen said on Sunday, 2 negative quarters of GDP growth is not the technical definition of recession. It's not the definition that economists have traditionally relied on. There is an organization called the National Bureau of Economic Research And what they do is they look at a broad range of data in deciding whether or not a recession has occurred. That is the process that economists and administrations have used for years and decades to identify when a recession has occurred. But from the president's perspective, putting that technical question aside, the most important question economically is whether working people and middle-class families have more breathing room, they have more job opportunities, their wages are going up in a stable way, and they're able to afford the important things in their lives, from food and gasoline also to health care and prescription drugs, and afford education for themselves and their children and otherwise. And that is what has animated his economic strategy. It's what his focus is on. It's why you have seen him as focused as he has been on trying to work to take policy actions that will lower prices and lower costs for American families in this moment, even as we work to bring inflation down and effectuate that transition to a more stable and steady state. So with that, let me pause and happy to take any questions you may have.